Welcome. You're listening to the Good Girls Don't podcast with Ashley Ray
and Verity Mansfield.
This is the podcast where we smash those rules that we've been taught to follow both as men and women and burn the damn rule book. We're tackling the big issues and the issues nobody wants to talk about, and we'll be fiercely feminist about it.
This podcast is about inspiration, education, compassion, and being the change that you need to see in this world. This podcast is for the trailblazers, the freedom fighters, and the soul igniters, and all the women just like you who are ready to break the good girl rules and be heard.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of Australia and its First Nations people on which this podcast is produced and consumed. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Get ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. You're gonna see revolution. And they'll never bring us down. No, they'll never bring us down.
Hi, Verity.
Hi, Ashley.
Oh my goodness, can you believe this is our very first episode of the Good Girls Don't podcast?
I know, and we are both super excited to not just bring this episode, but our whole podcast to as many people who we can. It's something we're so passionate about. We've been so passionate for so many years. We've had these conversations so much, and we figured it's time to step up ourselves and to bring these conversations back into the light.
I know, it feels we've been talking about all of these feminist issues, women's issues, whatever you want to call them, for years, and as awesome as it is to mull them over with you, we kind of figured we need to do something a bit bigger with it. And yeah, I'm really excited that we're finally getting off our butts and doing this. So thank you to everyone who is listening. We super appreciate it. Hopefully it's more than just one person. But we thought we should probably introduce ourselves to you because you may not know who we are. Sometimes I'm sure that we don't know who we are. So I'm going to
laugh, right?
Exactly. I'm going to start by introducing you to Verity. Verity's been my best business buddy for a few years now. We have ranted and supported each other through business highs and lows. She's made me cry, even though she probably doesn't know that.
With love. Hopefully
that's what you want to call it.
Call it what you will.
But I would probably describe Verity as a professional rule breaker. She coaches women to be rebels and breaking all of the rules, and I really love what she does because, you know, to be honest, when we first connected, I thought it was a bit of fluff, but then I got to know you and what you do more, and I was really, really so on board with it. But I need you to break it down for the good people listening.
Yeah, so, you know, in terms of rebelling and stuff, it's really about breaking those good girl rules. And you know, I grew up as the ultimate good girl. I wanted to please my parents. I didn't want to speak up if someone had hurt me because I didn't want to get them into trouble or it wasn't polite. You know, I was brought up not to rock the boat. You know, you couldn't have different ideas as somebody else in case, you know, you were disagreeable or seen as disagreeable. You know, and very much coming from an English background where little girls don't speak or don't talk unless spoken to, kind of thing. And I, you know, lived my life being or trying to be like a good girl for my mum because I wanted her to, you know, love me and adore me. And she used to come home from events and she'd, you know, say, oh, you know, everyone, I'm so proud of the two of you. You're such good children. And so this feeling of wanting to make my mum happy and proud. And I love my mum. We had a brilliant relationship. And then also kind of growing up through life and, you know, different scenarios where I look back and realize I played the good girl rules. You know, whether it was even sleeping with someone because he wanted it and, well, you know, you wanted to be liked, or you didn't want to hurt their feelings by rejecting them. And then even in my own marriage, being like the good mother and the good wife, and how exhausting it was, you know, and stepping on eggshells, and you know, just being so disempowered as a female because of the messages that society sends to us, and even about our own body image and how we see ourselves. And so by the time I ended up getting divorced, because everything became so painful and so frustrating, and I'd lost my sense of self, because I was defining who I was by the perception of the outside world, and not looking towards my inner compass and deciding who I wanted to be for me. You know, if my ex-husband said, you know, you've had enough of doing courses, stop learning, I would, even though learning was my highest value. Like, I gave things up because people didn't like things, but I loved them. And so, yeah, you know, it all fell apart. It all fell apart heading into my 30s. And I ended up as a single mother of 2 children with a mortgage and $136 cash in the bank, and just was like, how the fuck did I get here? Like, this was not the life I imagined. This was not what I was dreaming about when I was 16 or 23. It was a really painful place to be in. And even like, I left this international bridal company, this job as well, which seemed like a dream job, and it wasn't. I just walked out of my whole entire life and decided to rebuild it from scratch on my terms and unapologetically. And I've never, ever looked back.
Oh my goodness. And can I say, guys, as we go with this podcast, you will realize she means it when she says she's unapologetic about it.
I have great arguments at work and everywhere.
Exactly. And it's been amazing to watch this unfold, because you've got 2 girls who are my favorite. Well, okay, they're not my favorite, because my favorites are my sisters, and if I say otherwise, I will be in trouble. I'm going to say my 3rd and 4th favorite girls.
They're fierce girls. I love them.
They are, and they are. You've raised them to, you know, with such intention and consciousness around how you're raising them, what that's going to look like as they grow, and I think that's informed quite a lot of the work that you do.
Yeah, I want them to be fierce girls. I want them to question things. I want them to challenge with respect. Like, you can still do these things. You can still rebel. You can still say no. You can still say, you can still challenge people and still do it with respect. Like, you don't have to be an evil bitch, you know, to be a feminist. You don't have to be horrible to people to say no. Like, we can own ourselves and voice our rights and do it in a really beautiful, respectful way.
Abso-effing-lutely. And I love it. I think this is what I mean. I got to know Verity and what she does, and it was like, oh my God, light bulbs pinging everywhere for me. So that's why I've kept her, because she does that.
You kept me. Oh, baby. And we should actually also talk about Ashley and not just myself. And one of the things I love about Ashley is her openness and her honesty. And Ashley, for me, is like the podcast queen. And she loves supporting women in business to help them get their podcasts out. And I think that was so important for me, to work with someone who has this dedicated business on giving women a platform to have a voice. Like, if that isn't powerful, I don't know what is. So it kind of seemed really perfect for the 2 of us to join forces and to create this podcast for people.
I know, and we had been dancing around it for so long, and I was like, no, she's not going to want to host a podcast with me. It'll just be her. I was like, no, actually, I want to get involved more than just being the back end of this. So, yeah. But it is amazing, and that's why I love what I do, because it is, my business started off as one thing, and then it's moved into giving women a place to share what they know and share their wisdom and own their voice and use it.
And I think that's what's so important for us, is especially lately we've been looking at so many amazing and inspirational women across Australia. And how do we give all of these women a voice? How do we celebrate these women and let them be known? And even, Ashley's, telling about this brilliant book, 100 Nasty Women of History. And even like reading that book, I'm like, fuck, women have been written out of history. Like, so much of our history is the history of men. Like, where's the history of women? Where's this depth of empowering, like, crazy, fierce, like, females that have done amazing things in this world, and we do not know about them? We don't celebrate them. We don't talk about them. And we wonder why we live in, a society that doesn't value the work that women do.
Absolutely. And I remember, like, I picked up that book and I didn't really know what was going to be in that book, but I started reading the first couple of chapters and I cried because I didn't do history really at school outside of what was compulsory. So I did Australian history, like learning about Botany Bay and, how we basically killed all the Indigenous people, because that's what white people do. We colonize and kill. That's a very sarcastic comment, by the way, and also true. And I cried because I was suddenly seeing women from so many different ethnicities, and I could see these people who had come before, and these are people from thousands of years ago or even just 20 years ago, who had accomplished incredible things. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, is this how men feel when they see like Leonardo DiCaprio as the Great Gatsby? Or is this how they feel when they see Bill Clinton as president? Is like,
well, that sense of pride.
That pride, and that I can do this too. It was this real aha moment where I went, oh my God, like,
I'm proud
I
to be
need
a
this.
woman.
I'm proud to be a woman. I know this. I can see this. I can see myself reflected.
Yeah, this is our heritage, and we've never been taught to embrace our heritage as women.
Yep.
Yeah, and so, Ashley made a really beautiful point as well. Like, there are podcasts out there about, feminism and feminist issues for women, but, we could not find anything that highlighted issues in our own backyard. In Australia, the more research Ashley and I do, the more, there's so much issues with racism. There's so much issues with misogyny in Australia and in our political system and our economic system and, in the social areas. And it's like, holy shit, like, we need to talk about this stuff. And if we don't do it, who is?
Yep, we're doing the Emma Watson thing. So if not us, then who? If not now, then when?
Or Michael Jackson. Be the man in the mirror. Be the change you want to see.
Exactly. And it really is about that, because I love podcasts, guys. I say this to people all the time. I listen to 30 hours plus of podcasts a week. It's my job to do so.
Yeah, she really is a podcast queen.
And I cannot, I am all for finding shows that do tackle big things, not just about, how awesome it is to have a penis and money, but, ones that actually use this platform really powerfully and really beautifully. And there are shows that do that, but they're not Australian focused. They're not within the Australian context. And I find that bit really hard to reconcile, because there are people I follow and I love, and I really do enjoy their podcasts, but they don't talk about what's happening in our own backyard. Some of our greatest exports in terms of entertainers go to places like America or the UK, and then they start shows, and they are incredible podcasts. Please don't get me wrong.
They're fantastic.
They have changed my life. And it's incredible, but there's no one talking about what's happening in our country, and there's so much happening here that we have to start addressing, and we have to take some responsibility for addressing.
Yeah, and there's issues we've been looking at, like, sexual abuse, domestic violence. There's, porn. There's sexism in politics. There's, oh my God, like, I had a whole list of these things.
I've got a massive list in Asana.
There's so many things that we want to discuss. Abortion. There's already so many women as well that are doing incredible things in Australia and in our own home backyards. I'm in Perth. Ashley's in Melbourne. And I love that. We're like, you know, bringing everything from both sides of the country together.
East meets West.
East meets West. You know, and it's so important for us to look at these issues in our own backyard with an Australian perspective instead of, you know, an American perspective and focusing on the American issues or, you know, what's happening in England or Ireland.
Don't get me wrong, I think it's really important that we do look at what's happening on a global scale and in different places, but we need to have some focus here because
we're ignoring our own country.
We're ignoring our own country, but also, like, this is my story, is, you know, I went through a lot growing up. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse, domestic violence. I'm a survivor of about 10 rapes and sexual assaults. I've been through the legal process before. It's been a huge process for me to begin that recovery and actually begin to, you know, build a life again. But as I was going through all of this, I had so many questions. How was my situation allowed to happen in a country like Australia? Surely, you know, my thinking has always been, and I've had so much anger towards this actually over the years. I'm working through it, guys. I have stress balls. I'm working through it. You know, how was my situation allowed to happen? Where are the gaps in our society that allow this kind of thing to happen to children? That allow
to
this,
anyone,
to anybody.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and then learning through my own family history and all that, and going, okay, and going to therapy and doing different things and figuring out how this was actually allowed to happen, and going, well, this isn't okay, because the way, you know, to put this into context, I have sisters who are significantly younger than me. There's a 13 and then a 16-year age gap between me and my two sisters. So I was well in the throes of being a teenager, you know, when they were born. And the way I feel about my sisters is very, very maternal. And for me, having been through what I've been through and then holding them in my arms, you know, when they're only a few hours old, I had this huge moment where I was like, I will never let anything happen to you that happened to me.
Yeah.
And that was the big moment where I went, well, how do I start to change this? How do we start to create a different society?
But you know what? I had the exact same experience. There was 14 years between myself and my younger siblings. And yeah, I remember the exact moment, exactly where I was standing. My mum was still pregnant and we found out one of them was twins, one of them was a girl. And I remember the minute I found out one was a girl, I can remember exactly where I was and just thinking I will do everything to protect her rights. Yeah, and that as a woman's perspective, that just to be like, I was 14 and that's the first thing that entered my mind. Just being so aware, you know, as kids ourselves, that we are in danger. You know, you look at sexual, I was going to say not that we're in danger, we are. I'm sorry, but you live in Australia as a female, you are in danger. You're in danger of, you know, our sexual abuse rates are horrific. The reported rates are 30% of Australian women, female.
And that's just reported because...
That's reported. And I was just saying this to Ashley this morning, like all the women that I know who have been sexually abused, one person being Ashley is the only case I know that got reported. I'm like, holy fucking shit. What about the other 6 women? I never reported my sexual abuse. Like, no, the reported figure's at 30%. It's got to be double at least. Absolutely. Like, it's going to be horrific, absolutely jaw-droppingly, disgustingly, appalling, horrific figures.
Yep. Amen. Hallelujah. It is.
And you know what? We also need to look at domestic violence. The statistics in Australia from the Australian Bureau of Statistics is 1 woman in Australia dies every week as a result of domestic violence. Like, we have serious fucking issues in our country and we are not dealing with them.
No, we're not. And this was really where this podcast came from, because we both get angry about it. We both talk about it like every couple of weeks. We both have these epic long conversations. But the thing is, we're preaching to the choir. We're converted. We get it. We have these conversations with our friends and family and partners. My poor partner just looks at me, rolls his eyes, and is like, oh my God, here we go again. Let me get a drink. But it's, you know, it's having these conversations, creating that quiet revolution. We're in your ears right now. You're spending time with us. This is why I love podcasts, because you can be walking down the street listening to this content, which, you know, some people might label as anarchist or, oh gosh, what's that stuff? Blasphemous, whatever it is, like rebel papery things. Like, I'm thinking back to like revolutionary times. But podcasts are so intimate, and we really want this experience to be an intimate one for you. We want you to hear what's being said. We're going to have some amazing people we've got lined up to talk to you and talk with us about what's going on in their sector and in their niche and what we can actually do. So we really want this to be a show where you can also take some action and not feel like everything is hopeless, because it's very easy to get down in the dumps when we talk about these issues and be like, oh, there's nothing we can do, and you just want to be a puddle of tears. No, we actually want some action.
That was me Wednesday. And, you know, I was so lucky because I had Ashley behind me. I was just like, oh, my God, I'm fucking scared for my two daughters of they're about to enter a society where I might not be able to protect them from these things. And, you know, there's so many awful attitudes out there. And it's even things that are subconscious. Like, for instance, she was in her maths class last week and she came home in tears, and I was like, babe, what's wrong? And she said, I don't know. And I was like, I'm okay. And, you know, I'm thinking maybe it's just hormonal and all those things. And then after a few minutes, she said, Mum, I was in maths today. And she said, have you heard of this song? And it was like, it's called Thotiana, Bust Down Thotiana or something, by Blueface. And I was like, no, I've never heard of it. And she said the boys in maths were singing it. And they said, Mum, they were singing it really loudly. And I was like, where was your maths teacher? Oh, he'd left the room to go do some photocopying. And I was like, okay. So I said, what upset you? And she said, I don't know. I just felt sick. And I was like, right, let's Google the song. And we started reading the lyrics. And it's literally about gang raping a prostitute and all of the sexual acts she performs or has performed on her. She did not understand the lyrics when the boys were singing them, but she knew in her bones that she and all the girls in her class were feeling small, powerless, degraded, dehumanized, and she felt that to her very core as a 12-year-old girl. And these incidences might seem harmless or silly or frivolous, but they're fucking not. They're dangerous. We already have boys, young great boys exposed to dangerous perceptions about women.
Oh my God, do we ever? Hallelujah, amen. I've got
another rant.
All of, yeah, this is like a really good example of our normal conversation.
Yeah. And then we're like, great, thanks for that chat, Ashley. Bye.
We've got that off our chest. Let's go. All right.
Yeah, so like Wednesday, I was in tears. I'm like, how do I change this world? I'm researching politics and our politicians and things that happen on the parliament floor. I'm researching articles about policemen getting away in Perth, Western Australia, the Supreme Court just this week. You know, things that they're ruling on, that it's fine to grab a woman's ass. I'm just horrified, you know, sexual assault by police officers. There's been so much going on, listening to interviewing women about abortion, about rape, about pornography. And I was like, holy shit, this is so overwhelming. There's so much yuckiness, disgusting things going out there. How are we meant to change this world? How am I going to protect my children? How do I change this society that is going to empower my children and not destroy them? And, you know, we can sit around and wait for other women to make the change, but I was so lucky because I'm surrounded by amazing, empowering women who've got my back. And even by like having this discussion with my partner, and he was just like, babe, like, you have to do this podcast. People need to hear this shit. Like, I need to hear it as a man who's grown up with white male privilege in a white man's world, you know, and he used to play rugby internationally. Like, he is as fucking masculine as they come. And to have him turn around and be like, this is serious, you are doing important work, was just what I needed to hear to move past feeling powerless, step into my anger and into my passion, and to be like, right, let's just get on with this. But we need women to have these conversations, and not just have conversations with other women, but to have these conversations with the men in your lives, to have these conversations, you know, not just with your sister or your mother or your daughter. I mean, and that is really important, but we need to bring men into this conversation, and a lot of them are not going to like it. You know, I see the eye rolling, the here we go again, bloody women, you know,
Ladies with them thoughts and
you're a
ideas.
snowflake. And all of these things that men do. Yeah, how dare women have ideas in the 21st century? Damn it, we thought we squashed that.
That's what happens when you let them read.
when you bloody give them the vote. And now they want a seat in Parliament. There are so many silencing tactics that people do, and not just men but women too, to silence the feminist voice. Like, there's such a backlash against feminism. It's almost like people, and men feel very threatened, because I talk to a lot of men about this. They do feel threatened by feminism. They think that people who are talking about, or either label themselves as feminists or talk about feminism, are keeping men out of it. They think that they're trying to, you know, squash men down, push them down. And I think this is so important. Ashley and I were discussing, what is the definition of feminism? And I think this is such a crucial conversation that needs to happen. And what was the definition that we found? We looked in like Oxford Dictionary, Chamberlain, Webster. It was literally about the equal rights of women.
Yep. And then we looked at the Merriam-Webster dictionary as well.
Yeah.
Which was interesting that a ladies' dictionary has a slightly different definition. It's not just about women's rights. The Merriam-Webster dictionary, I find this really interesting because it's by a woman's dictionary, which was the social and political and economic equality of the sexes. And personally, that's my definition of feminism. That's how I roll. That's what I believe. So it's, yeah, Verity and I were talking about this earlier as well. Yeah, we had a lot of conversations leading up to hitting the record button on this. And we were saying, you know, well, is it extra rights? No, it's equal rights. It's not more than, it's equal.
It's not about destroying men. It's not about taking anything away from men. It's not about disempowering men. It's about raising women to the same human rights that men have.
And I want to add to that as well. It's also just because you get the legal rights doesn't mean you have the societal incentive to work and use those rights.
Yeah.
Like, we have to have a shift in culture. Like, just because women can be politicians legally doesn't mean we have female politicians.
Well, that means that they're not getting, it's not going to change a lot of stuff unless we change the attitudes of men in Parliament. Like, for instance, I've been looking at this this week, and yeah, it's great us having women in Parliament, but those women are being silenced, they're being bullied, they're experiencing sexual assault, even verbally, in Parliament, on the Parliament floor. I mean, we've had footage of Julie Gillard as our Prime Minister, like, just trying to shut Tony Abbott's sexist behaviour down, and she got ridiculed, she got shamed. People were too busy making fun of her hair and her clothes and to actually listen to the words out of our mouth. And if a fucking female Prime Minister doesn't have a voice in Parliament, no female politician has a voice in Parliament.
So basically what we're getting at, guys, is we're here to provoke a change. I'm not going to lie, we're asking you to change the way that you think and feel. We're not going to tell you what you should think and feel. That is, of course, completely up to you. But we are asking you to challenge what you perhaps have grown up to think, feel, and believe, because we basically have to deprogram ourselves, and we will get into this in another episode, but we've got to start creating that change. If we want a better world, if we want a better country, we have to start with ourselves and let that ripple out to the people around us.
Definitely.
Boom! I think we just that's it. I'm done. Like that was an amazing little bit there. So guys, look, this podcast will come out during school terms. There will be an episode each week. Now, we would love it if you would support this podcast, because we want to reach as many people as we can, men, women, however you identify. We want to meet you. We want to get to know you. We want to be supported by you. We want to support you as well. So we do have a Facebook page if you would like to come over and like and follow us there. It is at Good Girls Don't Pod. Or if you want to get in touch with us and share a story, or you want to talk about a topic, or you want to give feedback.
If you've got something for us to sink our teeth into that you feel is really important to you as a female,
send us an email.
And what's the email? The email is goodgirlsdon'tpod@gmail.com.
Which is awesome. There's also a little, when I say little, it's not little. We have a Facebook group. I can't remember what the link is, but Verity will, because it's...
It's like breaking the good girl rules.
Yes. And I want to stress that group is very much a safe place to continue having these conversations after each episode airs. Yes. So it's a private group. It's a safe space to have these conversations and continue to have them. Ask questions, not be afraid or ashamed to ask questions. It's very, very difficult to find places where it's safe to do this kind of thing online. But this is one of those places that's monitored all the time. So please support us. We would love it if you would also leave us a rating and review.
Yes, we need people to help us to help other people. So, no one ever does anything alone, which is why it's so beautiful, Ashley and I doing this together. But we need women to support us too, as we're supporting women. As we're celebrating women out there, we need you to help us to continue to celebrate these women. So with your support, with your ratings, with your spreading the word or sharing our Facebook page with other people, your comments, your likes, all of that stuff helps us to use our platform and our voice so that we can provide a voice to women who do not have voices.
I think you've just nailed it. I have nothing else to add to that. Awesome, guys. We'll be back in your ears soon with another episode.
See ya! Hey, if you want to continue this conversation, head over to our Facebook page and be part of the revolution. You can find us at Good Girls Don't Podcast on Facebook. Please note we cannot create change alone. Your support, likes, comments, shares, and iTunes reviews help us to give a voice to the insanely inspirational women and the controversial issues that we discuss.
If you'd like to be a part of our podcast, or if you have an issue that you have a burning desire for us to bring into the light, please contact us. With fierceness, Ashley
and Verity.
Get ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. You're gonna see it.